Emotions Matter, brought to you by Emaww.com. That's EMAWW.com, your solution for emotional intelligence. Welcome to the Emotions Matter podcast. We are excited today to have two guests with us on this episode, Kamy Eliassi and Terry Thompson. Kamy Eliassi studied business economics and accounting at UCLA before becoming a certified public accountant. He quickly moved up from a staff accountant to become managing director of an international logistics company at an early age. With over 7 years of executive leadership experience, Kamy's unique leadership style focuses on leading with inspiration and developing each individual based on their unique personality traits. He currently speaks on the topic of millennial leadership and provides management and leadership consulting to companies and their leaders. Terry Thompson was an executive vice president and general manager of a company that became the only national provider of on-site diesel fuel management services in Canada. Under Terry's leadership, the company became Canada's 7th best company to work for in a national survey and voted as one of Canada's 50 best managed companies in 2010. Thompson sold his interest in the company and is currently a private investor and volunteer business mentor. He has over 30 years of leadership and management experience leading and consulting various organizations in a number of different industries. Well, with all that being said, I would like to introduce my guests. Kamy, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, John. It's wonderful to be here today.
Great. Terry, welcome to the podcast.
Hi as well, John. Also good to be here.
Good stuff. I'll tell you what, let me just throw a question out there. How did a millennial and a baby boomer meet up to write a book?
Well, John, what happened was I was managing director for an international logistics company back then, and I was really going through some management challenges, and I felt that I really needed some mentorship and guidance to really take my management skills to a higher level. And I looked around, and there was this great organization called SCORE. And basically what happened was I did some research to find someone that I felt really had the qualifications and I could connect with to really help me kind of in my growth as a manager. So I was really picky, and I looked around, I searched, and I found Terry Thompson, who had volunteered to be a mentor at SCORE. And I reached out to him. He got back to me exactly within a few hours. Next thing you know, we set up a meeting in Glendale, California. I met up with him over there, and we decided to do weekly calls and meetings to kind of go over management and leadership principles and kind of guide me through, my leadership as I was trying to develop. And what happened was at the end of the year, we decided to take a lot of his management writings that he had written along with some of my insights and principles and said, hey, why don't we make this into a book and kind of take our experience and take all these writings and do a great thing with it. So that's kind of how the book came along. Terry, what do you remember about all this?
Oh, pretty much along those lines. I guess exactly as you said it, Kamy. But I think you should give yourself more credit. Kamy just came in and he was one of the few mentees that would actually stick to any kind of communication structure and progression structure. And it was actually his idea to write the book. I'd written a few years before about 50, 60 articles for another mentoring organization in Canada who had a newsletter, and they were just looking for people who would just write 1 or 2 articles. And I had just kind of recently sold my interest in a company, had a bit of time, and decided that let's see what I could put on paper. And it kind of evolved into a series of articles over a 1-year period that then got published in this newsletter over a two-year period. But when Kamy came in, I kind of mentioned I had these, and he was the one who kind of said, yeah, well, let's start using them. And so he would get 5 or 10 of these every week, and then we would spend an hour or two on the phone, and he would apply the ones that he thought worked for him, and he'd have questions and stuff. And And at the end, he was the one who actually said, let's go write a book. And I said, that'd be great, as long as you do all the hard work now, because I know I have some idea how much work it is to get a self-published book out there. And so he was the man that really did the nuts and bolts to get this out in public.
Oh, thank you, Terry. It was really a joint effort.
Well, that is a terrific insight as to what looks like a really great partnership between the two of you guys. I'd like to hear a little bit more, Terry, about this SCORE group.
It's a national organization, part of the SBA, the Small Business Association, I think it's called. The government funds it. And it's mainly retired business people. You'll get the odd person who's still working. And it's open, and they mentor anybody who walks through the door. They put on workshops at a cheap price. There's chapters all over the U.S.
Wow.
Easy to find. If you just go score.org, you'll find the national website, and then every chapter has their own website. So, for instance, Los Angeles is scorela.org, if my memory serves me correctly. And on the website, you'll get the list of the mentors they have with a bit of background on them, and I guess that's what Kamy was referring to when he was searching for one. But it's a great organization. You can anybody anywhere, if there's a chapter near them, can go in and get any mentoring they want in business. Whether they're just thinking of a startup, they've actually started something up, they're established in business, whatever. They can get these free services and these very good workshops at a really low price. So I found them because I had a bit of time and I was looking for some intellectual stimulation. Business mentoring seemed like when I started it in Canada, because I'm originally from Canada. I thought, well, now I'm here in the greater LA area, maybe they got something in the greater. And it's really a great organization and not as well known as it should be.
Okay, so the book is called Millennial Leadership. Why don't you guys tell us something about your book, maybe a teaser or a quote to get our listeners interested?
Well, John, I'll just start by maybe reading you a quote, which I really found very powerful and kind of moved me. And I'll just give you some basic pointers on the book. So I'll start with this quote. The greater your passion and desire, the more clearly you will see your vision, and the more motivated you will be to make it a reality, regardless of the obstacles you face along the way or how many times you get off track. So this quote is actually from our vision section. It's kind of something that moved me, so I wanted to share it with all the listeners. But I think what makes our book really powerful, it's that it covers the fundamentals of management and leadership in 10 concise chapters, but also it has inspiring stories and insights from both the baby boomer generation, which Terry's from, and myself, a millennial. So we really cover both spectrums of experiences. And it has a really powerful introduction which motivates the reader to take actions necessary to change their behavior change and seek guidance and mentorship so that the rest of the chapters can come to fruition. That's what I think makes this book really unique. It covers the fundamentals, it has inspiring stories from two different generations, and it has a really powerful boost at the beginning to push you to seek the right mentorship, to understand the value of behavior change, and it's a necessary function in your growth as a leader so you can execute all the other steps that we covered through the rest of the book. I wanted to kind of share those kind of pointers as the overarching values of the book.
Yeah, I kind of echo what Kamy said. I think when we looked at this, John, we also tried to figure out why is it that so few people use self-help books in an effective way. I think the numbers are like less than 3 or 4% actually gets a meaningful benefit out of self-help books, which is a pretty shockingly low percentage. So some of the reasons we think there are for that low number are, one is self-help books are often way too long, and they often include way too many examples, deal with way too many topics, and it's kind of tough to sift through the audio to figure out what works for you. And I'd heard on more than one occasion that often the people who are the most effective users of self-help books are the ones that just start with the summaries at the end of each chapter. So they don't have to read pages and pages, and then if they think they need more info based on the summary, they'll read the chapter in more detail. So one of our overriding themes on this book was to try to make every chapter that summary at the end of a sort of a traditional chapter, shall we say. So you don't have to read page after page after page to get to the meat of the point we were trying to make. Second item was we try to go on the 80-20, 90-10 rule, where a lot of self-help books will deal with everything under the sun that deals with whatever topic they're trying to self-help somebody in. We tried to get to the key point that you really do, the must-dos instead of the must-haves. So there's other things we could have thrown in there about compensation and some other things that we just chose not to, because unless you did, in our minds at least, unless you tackled the topics that we put in there, the rest really didn't make any difference. And lastly, Kamy touched on the behavior change concept. You don't see this very often in any self-help books, but we just try to introduce the concept of any self-development involves personal behavior change. So we try to introduce the concept of every behavior change is not the same, and we sort of grade them into easy, kind of average, and then difficult behavior change. And what we think people should do when they use self-help books is to kind of identify which of the points they're reading involve small to medium to big behavior changes, and then try and bring that into their own personal development plan, because typically the highest value items quite often involve the biggest behavior change, not always. So, and they often try and tackle those things first, and because big behavior change is a difficult thing to do, the results usually aren't that great, then people just give up. Instead of saying, perhaps, let's identify the items that might have medium value but small behavior change, and let's start with those types of actions first, and get those things done, and then move on to maybe the bigger behavior change items after, once we've had some success with the other actions we take. So those are kind of the other items in the book that we thought would be useful for the reader and make it a bit different than most self-help books they probably encountered in the past.
Well, I'll have to tell you, I had the opportunity to read the book, and I was in management for 25 years as an IT director. And I can tell you that the points and the concepts that you have in the book absolutely mirrored everything I experienced as a manager. For someone who, I wish I had had the book when I had started, but I can tell you that everything that I read in there was absolutely spot on to everything that I experienced and all of the things that I needed, the tools I needed to move forward. So,
well, John, I wish I'd had the book back when I was 30 years old too. I would have worked a lot fewer hours than I did.
That's right.
For about 20-something years.
Yeah. Well, I tell you what. So Kamy, let me ask you, what was or still is your fear when you started your career? What do you think most millennials struggle with today?
Well, John, I graduated from UCLA with pretty much a double major at busy kind of accounting, and I relatively had very good GPA. I was a pretty solid student, but boy, I couldn't even get a job out of college, and the economy wasn't doing that great. But it took me 7 months to find a company that would hire me in an accounting position. It was really, really a difficult time. And I think that's the moment that you're really tested, when your career hasn't even begun and you're just kind of like, you feel it's already done. Thank God I found the right opportunity, and I grew in that opportunity from staff accountant to managing director. So my biggest fear was really not finding a company that was a cultural fit, and not finding a company that would allow me to advance to the position I really wanted. And I think most millennials, based on our research, and we kind of talked about this a little bit in the book, is they really looking for a work-life balance, and to find a company that's logistically logical, which means it's close enough and also culturally fit, which basically allows them to feel at home and gives them the opportunity to grow and advance. It's really difficult. And that's the biggest fear I had, and I think that's the biggest fear most millennials have. And what they really have to do is they really have to do their due diligence to research where they belong and really go after those kind of companies and try to find a home that allows them to advance and give them that work-life balance that we all desperately need in this generation.
Well, great insights. So, Terry, if you could compare Kamy's answer to the times when you were starting, so what do you think is the most significant difference at the beginning of a career of a millennial now and a baby boomer back then?
Well, I think this is like 40 years ago, John. So Kamy's memories are probably more vivid for him than mine are. But from what I remember, back then, corporate culture wasn't even a concept I'd heard of. So, culture fit, all that kind of stuff, which I thoroughly believe in now, wasn't even something I knew about. So I didn't know what I didn't know. And I'm not sure if you recall, back in those days, people got married or committed to marriage a lot younger on average than they are now. So they were probably earlier in what I'll call settling down, quote unquote. So you're when you're looking for a job back then, I don't think the environment had changed yet to any great degree where people had multiple jobs. I mean, now people are used to changing jobs every 5-6 years, either because they want to or because their employer dictates it. Back then, I think it was still, hey, we're trying to find something that we can be there forever, and I didn't really worry about culture fit because it just wasn't a concept that was known at all, really. I think our and that's probably I guess I kind of envy the millennials because they're more self-aware of life balance and that culture should mean something and everything else, and we didn't back then. Maybe to our detriment. It certainly caused less stress when you're finding a job because you didn't worry about that kind of stuff. Right. And back then, I don't know if it was just me. There was I don't know if jobs were more plentiful, there was less competition, there wasn't as much concern about finding a good job back then either, as I know I hear now. Mm. So some of the bigger than I think that we experienced than say Kamy was facing or millennials are facing now.
So let me ask you guys, can you give us an example of how did you two deal with fear as you were moving through your careers?
I mean, my example, I think that one way to deal with it is you will get down. It will knock you down, but you have to get back up and you just got to press forward. And it goes back to vision. I think we talked about this in the book. Having really a vision will push you and motivate you to push forward and deal with the fear. Most people, I think the challenge is not having a clear vision. And that's something that, it's not going to just come in overnight. You have to develop a clear vision of what you want to be, what you want to do. And if you don't have that, then you don't have the right motivation to deal with the obstacles, which includes fear and setbacks and so forth. So that's the way I dealt with it. I really wanted to do something powerful, so I kept pushing forward. And the fear is always going to be there. And some of it is good. You need some of that fear to push you. But you can't let it get you down, and you definitely can't stay down when you do go down, and you will.
Yeah, no, I agree with Kamy's comments. In my case, really the only fear I ever faced was kind of the fear of failure, and that's just kind of an involuntary emotion I have. I guess I define fear of failure mean the fear of being average, as opposed to outright failure, and it was my reaction to it was more of an involuntary focusing on finding a solution to get to where I needed to get to. I don't know. It was just something I had naturally that my brain would just without trying automatically focus on. Hey, okay, you got a problem, or you're trying to get to a certain place or reach a certain objective, and it looks like that's not going to happen. I can't say there wasn't the odd moment of panic, but by and large, it was just kind of this involuntary focusing that got me there. And it obviously, and I think, I don't know, there's different ways to categorize kind of motivation. There's the fear of failing and there's the drive for success. Mm-hmm. My experience, more people have the fear of failure, I think, than a drive for success. I think the serial entrepreneurs are more likely to have a drive for success than the non-serial entrepreneurs. But I found my own experience was that fear of failure is a stronger motivator than drive for success. You'll lose more sleep, though. You won't sleep as well as the ones who want to drive for success. But boy, it is a powerful motivator, depending on how deeply you feel it in your own personal circumstances.
Right. So Terry, you wrote some articles on leadership and management, and I know it's not simple to sum it all up, but can you give us kind of an overview of your, let's say, philosophy of leadership and, kind of what's the catch?
Well, I think I always start with objectives. So if I'm ever trying to do almost whatever, is what's the real objective? So there's many objectives you could sort of outline for what makes a great leader or a great manager. I like the best, though, is that a great leader, their main objective, and you can quote this, is to build and maintain a high-performing team. Simple. That's the main objective. Obviously, the leader is a member of that team, so it doesn't mean the team members are excluded from the leader in the definition of team. But for me, once I really understood that, it made a huge difference in the actions I took after that. So just to reiterate, the main thing as a great leader is to build and maintain a high-performing team. And there's definitions of high-performing, but that can be circumstantial specific. But I think if you have that overriding objective, it will refine your planning and your action plans in the way they should be. So within that, I kind of identified 4 top priorities to be able to build and maintain a high-performing team. At the top of the list, and it's sort of like retail where it's location, location, location. This has the same importance to being a great leader, and that is just hire highly capable, extremely motivated, and emotionally intelligent people. That's 90% of being a great leader. If you can do that, your life as a leader is exponentially ahead of anyone who doesn't attend to that first on that. So second priority is, once you have those people, help them to identify how to become empowered and super self-sufficient at what they do, and then help them get there. The third is, don't demotivate them. So I remember one of the best management principles I ever learned was I was at a management training program, and the leader of that particular day, and there's about 40 of us in the room, all managers, middle to senior managers. And he said, who's responsible for motivating the people who report to you? And guess what? Every hand went up saying, it's me. They said, the next question was, who's responsible for motivating you? Every hand went up and said, it's me. So the obvious conclusion was, that why then do you feel responsible for motivating the people who report to you? Why don't you just hire self-motivated people? Mm-hmm. And have the same feeling you do, where they're responsible for motivating themselves, you aren't. So light went on for me. That changed my hiring principles night and day. But so that's why I say don't demotivate them. If you're hiring self-motivated people, just don't motivate them. Meaning communicate with them properly. Encourage them, give them constructive feedback in a respectful way. A variety of things, but don't demotivate. And then last is, be emotionally intelligent as a leader. Now if you're not naturally emotionally intelligent, that's obviously the toughest thing to do. But fortunately, and it's a whole other topic, there are ways for people to identify where their emotional intelligence weaknesses are, and obviously work on them. So that may be more than just I hope that wasn't too long an answer, John, but I felt those are kind of the keys to becoming a great leader.
Actually, that's terrific. Like you said, I think the topic of emotional intelligence is a much deeper conversation that we could do an entire interview just on that, for sure.
I agree.
So, Kamy, you are the founder and CEO of Chapter. How do you deal with the pressure of having talented and motivated people following your lead?
Well, John, as you well know, Chapter is a startup in the emerging audiobook market, and we're developing the very first platform that features free audiobooks on demand for free with audio advertisements. And boy, I tell you, until you have led a startup, you haven't really lived life. It is the most difficult. It is by far the most difficult thing that one can do, and I'm doing it now. And boy, it was. I remember being a managing director for a established logistics company in a different industry. It was already very challenging to hire and retain and keep motivated, like Terry was saying, highly qualified and motivated people. That was already very difficult with a company that had revenues and history and established structure. When you go to a startup where all it is just basically an idea and a vision, to try to get people interested and motivated to even especially if they're talented, to want to even play the game you're playing. It's just a whole different game. And I tell you the way I'm dealing with it, and I've had some limited success and, still getting some setbacks that we need to kind of fix over time. But the way I'm dealing with it is I keep showing the vision of what we can do together. And that's the key. And the leader, I think we talked about this in one of the key chapters early on in our book. The leader has to have a very clear vision of what they want to make. And as Terry very eloquently said it before, is that it's not enough to say, I have a vision. You have to show and prove to everyone else why you and this team can reach that vision. And that's kind of the key that I'm developing. And that's what I'm doing to kind of get motivated and talented people to come and follow the company and help this company get to the next level. And I think the key that I'm working on, and this every person should do this no matter what they are in life, is they have to keep relighting that passion. If you feel your passion is going down, it basically means you're stopping and you're slowing down to a point where you're basically not moving. If you feel and you see that's happening, and I emphasize the word feel because you have to feel it and you have to see it. If you see that's happening, it basically means your passion has really gone down. You have to relight it, rekindle it, push it forward, and refuel it, because as a startup, and even not as a non-startup, at any stage you are, there will be setbacks, there will be issues, but you have to keep relighting it. You have to get back up and push forward.
That's some great insight. I tell you, that's going to be very valuable for our listeners. Let's jump into a quick question that we had from one of our listeners. So this one comes from Mark. He's from Sydney. He's 38 and a CEO of a small startup. His team consists of both millennials and members of Generation X. His question is, what is the best thing to do to make the best out of the age gap that exists, which often causes problems? And I'll put this out for either one of you or both. Terry, if you'd like to start, that'd be great.
Well, I think Kamy should start with this one. He has way more experience at this issue than I do.
Okay. Well, I tell you, John, I had direct experience with this where I was in the logistics, directing for the logistics company, and we had millennials, we had Gen X's, we had a few baby boomers as well. And one of the key things we did, and we sensed some of the differences kind of affecting some of the workforce. And one of the first things we did, we actually brought in an outside consultant who did personality profiling for everyone. And during that process, which were kind of various company events where all the team got together and kind of went through this process, we all learned the differences that exist between people. And that includes every person in every generation. There are different personality profiles and there are different categories. And there's usually a set of 4 really in the world that dominates these different 4 personality profiles. What we did was the DISC profiling, or DISC, and that kind of helped everyone to understand the differences that exist between people and how to communicate with different people of different categories. And then in that process, we found that, the generation difference also has an impact. People that are typically were our bosses or baby boomers had a different perspective than some of the younger employees we had who were millennials. And once there were events, a company effort, it has to start from the management. It can't start from the bottom. It has to start from the management, putting events and talking about these differences, educating people about their personalities and other people's personalities, educating people about the different values from different generations, and that there's nothing wrong with any of these. It's just as long as everyone respects and is able to professionally talk about these differences, and yet use the positive values they all have together, they can do some really powerful things. Mm-hmm. And that's what we did, and it was pretty helpful. So that's what I recommend to your listener.
Terry, any follow-up on that question?
No, I think, the only thing I would say is just, I think we assume that everybody knows these different generations and that they are different. But I don't think they necessarily do, certainly not baby boomers. So just the only thing I can add, and Kamy kind of said already, is I think, especially if you're in a leadership position, you should take the time to learn more about what each generation is and what's important to them and why it's important to them and how you use their strengths and accommodate I'll call it weaknesses or areas that you may not be in total agreement with. So probably just a nutshell, just learn more about those topics, because you'll be in a better position then to understand what's going on and to be able to take advantage of that knowledge.
So we have another question from one of our listeners that might be interesting for both of you. This question comes from Dave from the UK. He's 31, working as a graphic designer. He wants to know, how did you manage to deal with procrastination and write a book while having a full-time job? So he's currently struggling with consistent procrastination and can't get himself to start.
This is actually probably the biggest reason why people who want to start businesses or who just start up never get going. And it became such an obvious thing, because I mentored dozens of people while I was at SCORE. And the number one obstacle to moving along and getting things going was they never treated this as a second job. And what I mean by that is, if they had gone and got a second job where they had to go to work at 5 o'clock in the evening and stay till 9 o'clock because they had a boss and they had to show up, they would have done it. No problem. And so the average person can stick to a schedule when it's kind of forced on them, if they want that second job. Most people's failure, unfortunately, is they have a difficult time imposing that type of discipline on themselves. So I would always start. I learned with the people I was mentoring. First thing I would say to them is, I hope you succeed. I'll work with you. But my experience is the reason most people don't make any progress here is they don't pick what days in the week they're going to pursue this objective that they've identified, whether it being starting up a business or having just started something. And then secondly, on those days, they don't pick the hours in the day that they're going to actually work on the project. So for Dave, who wants to write a book, what he should be saying is, okay, I'm gonna pick Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Sunday, and I'm gonna work from this time to this time every day. It's my second job. I got to show up to work. Second, they don't do is they don't set any metric targets for themselves as to what, if it's possible. It's not all projects or objectives you can be as quantitative, but if they can somehow quantify some targets that they're trying to achieve every day that they're spending on this, that'll help them too. And then finally, obviously, and Kamy touched on it in a good way, is if you can find somebody who can hold you accountable to your objectives, and even better, give you some advice, and be an actual mentor to you, you have a way better chance of overcoming your procrastination. So I say three key areas. Be disciplined in when you're going to do it in a week. Set some targets for yourself, and find somebody, if at all possible, who can encourage you and help you and hold you accountable to what you're trying to do.
Those are terrific insights and great recommendations for Dave, and hopefully Dave will take those to heart and move forward with his project. So that's terrific. So it's been almost a year since your book has been published. How satisfied are you guys with the feedback so far, and what are your plans maybe for the future?
Well, Kamy's into this. I'm involved in a number of early stage companies, not as involved in Kamy's yet, but I hope to be sometime in the not too distant future. So I don't know, Kamy. I'd like to hope that will be the next major thing we'll do in terms of another book or a rewrite of this one or amendment. That could happen too, I guess.
Yeah, I tell you, John and Terry, I agree with you. With this experience of writing a book, and that's another thing every person should do. It's write. If it's not a book, it should be an article. If it's not an article, it should be a sentence. If it's not a sentence, it should be a word. Everyone should kind of write and put their experiences and history in writing of some kind. But this experience of writing a book was really, really powerful and kind of helped me grow. I think it was very empowering for Terry as well. And it was a great experience. I mean, Terry is a really, really reliable partner. We really did a good job in kind of coordinating all the things that needed to be done with the book. And the feedback has been pretty solid so far. We really haven't, we've been so busy with our own activities, we really haven't had a chance to push the book more. But we have got really good feedback from everyone who's read it, and a lot of people that's kind of looking at it. So, and I would love to work with Terry. I mean, I would like him to be an advisor for a chapter, the startup that I'm leading right now, and he's kind of still a mentor to me. We keep in touch at least once a month, kind of talking about, all the things that we're dealing with. And he's doing some really cool stuff. Terry's really involved with some really powerful, cool stuff. So I like to kind of be in touch and stay in tune. Maybe we could do other things together. So yeah, we're definitely other things are coming up. It's just time will tell.
So the book is available at your website, y-leadership.com, and the book is called Millennial Leadership. So there's other resources on that site as well, right?
Yeah, so we have a few things. One is that we have the DISC profile that I was telling you is a personality profile similar to Myers-Briggs, but I think is much more powerful for people to learn and use. We have that available for people if you want their personality profiles done at y-leadership.com/DISC or DISC. That's available. We have free chapters as well as a whole action plan for managers to use. That's also available. We have put that in the book for anyone who wants to kind of sign up and get that. That's available for free. And we also have developed the very first behavior change score, which is an infographic, which will take you about maybe a minute to do. And you just go to y-leadership.com/behavior change. And this infographic will take you over 7 questions, which will help to predict your chances of successfully changing behavior and suggesting ways where you can kind of make adjustments if that number is not very high. So that's kind of some of the resources available. We just wanted to create something where people not just read the book, but are able to have additional resources available for them, because this is really a lifelong process. It's not something you just read a book and next thing you know, you're the best manager in the world. You read one book and you read another book and you read more books. And most importantly, we cover this in the beginning of the book, and this is really the theme of the book. You have to get mentors and advisors, and you have to stick to the value of behavior change and work on that. And that's what really will make you have a much higher chance of succeeding as a leader. That's kind of what it's all about.
That is terrific.
I agree.
Yeah, good stuff.
Agree.
Well, this has been a very interesting conversation. Kamy, Terry, I certainly appreciate you both being a part of the Emotions Matter podcast. Appreciate you being here and looking forward to more stuff from this dynamic duo for management philosophies and help for the rest of the folks of us out there in the world trying to move forward in a management career.
Thank you so much, John. It's been great.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity, John.
Again, let me thank my guests, Kamy Eliassi and Terry Thompson, for sharing their management and leadership insights. Look for more information on their book as well as other resources at y-leadership.com. As always, I look forward to being with you again on another episode of the Emotions Matter podcast.